So fellas, last night we had UFC Fight Night Atlanta, and these are the fights to make after UFC Atlanta. I've got the timestamps on screen for the winners of the prelims and every winner and loser from the main card, and we'll go in there with the first fight on the prelims, or the first winner on the prelims. Jamie Lynn Hoff, as she gets through Vanessa Demopoulos. I think a good step up for Jamie Lynn Hoff could be Karine Silva. Jamie Lynn Hoff just absolutely dominated Vanessa Demopoulos like it was nothing. Beat the absolute crap out of her across 15 minutes. Now, fair enough, might not have been against the highest level of competition, but I feel like Karine Silva, she was a bit of a prospect, just took a bad loss to Arujah. Jamie Lynn Hoff, bit of a win-loss fighter, but it isn't like she's losing to bums. She lost to Veronica Hardy and Miranda Maverick, who just looked impressive in the co-main event. So I think we'll give her a bit of a step up in competition. Karine Silva, I definitely favour Karine Silva to win this fight. Like I said, she was once a bit of a prospect in this division before, but Jamie Lynn Hoff, just an impressive win. Only really lost to, the elites like Miranda Maverick. I say we let her have a step up against Karine Silva coming off a loss. Jamie Lynn Hoff versus Karine Silva. And then for Phil Raw, finishes Angelusa after getting dominated in the first round, gets a good comeback finish. I think a good fight for the welterweight division could be Phil Raw versus Ramiz Brahimaj. They're both in a very similar position. Phil Raw, he was once on a bit of a winning streak, fell short a couple of times, and now he's back in the winning column. And Brahimaj was a bit of a win-loss fighter, but now he's kind of got some momentum as he knocks out Mickey Gall and beats Billy Ray Goff. I like this matchup. You've got a dangerous striker in Phil Raw. I think he's got a 100% finishing rate as well. Tall, rangy, difficult to figure out dangerous striker versus Ramiz Brahimaj, who's a dangerous grappler. 2-0, well, finished Mickey Gall by KO and then just submitted Billy Ray Goff in his most recent fight. Great submission artist. So I feel like this could be a good striker versus grappler matchup. Brahimaj, who has pretty poor striking, against Phil Raw, who has amazing striking. Phil Raw with pretty poor grappling against Brahimaj, who has pretty solid grappling. Could be a good fight for the welterweight division. Gets them both close to the top 15. Phil Raw, Brahimaj, get it on a card later on this year. I think that makes sense. And then for Ricky Simon, dominates Cameron Smotherman. Didn't get the finish, didn't make it look super entertaining. Was a lot of holding him against the cage and kind of just wearing him out, but still got the job done on a winning streak. I think for Ricky Simon, a fight that makes sense could be Jonathan Martinez. They're both in a very similar position, but it's kind of like opposites of what happened to them. Ricky Simon was once a prospect, and then he started to lose, and now he's kind of picked up momentum again after he knocked out Javid Basharat and beat Cameron Smotherman. And then Jonathan Martinez had some momentum, beating the likes of Adrian Yanez and Saidna Magomedov, and now he's on a bit of a losing skid. He's lost to Aldo Marcus McGee, but I think it could be an interesting fight. You've got Jonathan Martinez, good rangy kickboxer who has really good leg kicks, known for his elite striking, and he showed it at least on his run to the Jose Aldo fight. Against Ricky Simon, who's a bit of a, heavy pressure grappler, likes wearing people out with the grappling, but also has some pretty solid boxing on the feet, and we saw Jonathan Martinez struggle with Aldo's boxing as well. And I think the winner could get into the top 15. I think if Ricky Simon can beat Jonathan Martinez, he's now going to be on a 3-fight winning streak. He's only lost to the elites. I think like a Ricky Simon versus somebody in the top 15 wouldn't be a bad shout, and same for Martinez. So Ricky Simon, Jonathan Martinez, don't really care what card you do, but I'm interested in this matchup. Martinez was just ranked, falling off the rankings. Ricky Simon's got some momentum. Put them against each other. Interested to see how he'd figure out. I'll probably lean towards Ricky Simon winning this fight. And if he can win this fight, like I said, get him somebody in the top 15. Ricky Simon, Jonathan Martinez, get the fight booked. Jose Ochoa, bringing some new life to the flyweight division. He got out there and flatlines Cody Durden in brutal fashion. Just seconds after Cody Durden was hyping up the crowd in front of his home crowd as well. So for Jose Ochoa, I think we just put him in there straight away. Listen, I'm not going to put him in there with an absolute monster, but I say Bruno Silva makes sense for Jose Ochoa. Now, obviously, Bruno Silva is quite a big step up for your third fight in the UFC, but the guy's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's been finished in his last 2 by Manel Kape and Joshua Van. He's still ranked number 14 in the division, so if Jose Ochoa can beat him, he gets in the top 15. And I just like this matchup. Jose Ochoa is rapid on the feet. He's one of the best flyweight prospects we've got right now. Is it a step up in the competition for Jose Ochoa? It definitely is, because, Bruno Silva's not necessarily a bum. But could he sleep Silva? Of course he could. Bruno Silva's just been slept twice, has terrible boxing. Jose Ochoa being as fast as he is, definitely a winnable fight. So I think it's a perfect fight. We don't need to slow coast Jose Ochoa and make him take the slow game. I know he's quite young for the division as well, but I think if he can just go in there against Bruno Silva, and if he can go out there and finish Bruno Silva as well, he's now suddenly in the top 15 after 2 wins in the UFC, and he's going to be fighting up, bringing life to this division. Jose Ochoa, Bruno Silva, they're both pretty evenly matched on the feet. I'd be excited to see this fight. And then for Malcolm Wellmaker, getting with the best finish on the card as he absolutely sleeps Chris Mutino with a right hook, sending him out cold. For Malcolm Wellmaker, there's only one fight that I've been thinking about ever since this has happened, and it is Adrian Yanez. This is one of the best fights you can do in the bantamweight division. I've been waiting for this fight for so long, ever since Malcolm Wellmaker knocked out Chris Mutino. Malcolm Wellmaker versus Adrian Yanez would be straight heat. I don't even care if you have this on a pay-per-view main card. That's how good of a fight this would be. Malcolm Wellmaker, the best bantamweight prospect right now, sleeping everybody left, right, and center with that right hook. Seems to be pretty unstoppable. Adrian Yanez was once in the same position. Very good boxer, one of the best offensive boxers in the bantamweight division. Malcolm Wellmaker seems to have power, seems to time people perfectly. Adrian Yanez, some of the best boxing combinations, all guns blazing in the bantamweight division. Would it be pure violence? It would. Could they both KO each other? They both could. Is it a step up for Wellmaker? Yes, it is. Malcolm Wellmaker versus Adrian Yanez. I swear, if they do like Malcolm Wellmaker versus either a Can or just some stylistic matchup that makes no sense, they've just dropped the ball. There is no obvious fight to make next for Malcolm Wellmaker. Have him on like a pay-per-view prelim headliner. Wellmaker, Adrian Yanez, 3 rounds, pure violence. If Malcolm Wellmaker can get past Yanez as well, again, that's a huge win. And if Yanez can beat Wellmaker, just shut down the biggest prospect. This is the fight to make. It should have been Peyton Talbot versus Adrian Yanez when Peyton Talbot beat that French dude. So now this fight makes more sense than ever. Wellmaker, Yanez, get the fight done, straight heat. And then for Michael Chiesa, Chase Chiesa for slowing down the momentum of the card. Give him the loser of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Gabriel Ismail Bonfim. I think that makes sense. Although I want to kind of force Chiesa to fight down in the rankings, he is on a 3-fight winning streak, so I feel like it's only fair that you do give him a bit of a step up. And if Stephen Thompson loses, well, he has lost the vast majority of his recent fights, but I feel like this is just a fight where we can kind of get the momentum back for Stephen or Bonfim, because I really do feel like you do Stephen Thompson versus Chiesa. Stephen Thompson had pieced the fuck out of him. Yes, he's washed, yes, he's old, but so is Chiesa. He absolutely styles on Chiesa on the feet. And Ismail Bonfim is just a younger, better version of Michael Chiesa. He'd get him out of there as well. So whoever loses that fight, let them build the name, let them build themselves back by riding the momentum of a win over Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa against the loser of Stephen Thompson and Ismail Bonfim. Get that done. And then for Alonzo Menifield, really boring fight with Umar Sy as he gets the decision win. I think we do Alonzo Menifield versus a loser of Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. Even though, again, I'm kind of skeptical of giving Alonzo Menifield anybody in the top 10. He has just beat 2 kind of upcomers in a row. 2 in a row for Alonzo Menifield. He kind of has to fight up at that moment in time. If Jamal Hill loses to Khalil Roundtree, he's going to be on a 3-fight losing streak, potentially 3 by KO. He's definitely going to have, to fight down in the rankings. And for Khalil Roundtree, if he loses to Hill, again, 2-fight losing streak, he's going to have to fight down as well. And I feel like Alonzo Menifield normally isn't really a boring fighter. I kind of blame Umar Sy for that fight. He is usually a bit of an explosive fighter, always walking forward, has a pretty quick start. And I feel like you put him against Jamal Hill or Khalil Roundtree, I failed to see how either of those guys can be boring for Alonzo Menifield. So give him somebody in the top 10. Probably the loser of Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree makes sense for some sort of card. Step up for Alonzo Menifield. Gets him in the top 10 as he's riding a 2-fight winning streak. And could potentially be a bounce-back win for Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. And then for Cody Brundage, the first loser of the main card, I say we give him a Teba Gautier. Now, if you don't know who a Teba Gautier is, this guy, well, he's got a fight booked with Robert Valentin. He's going to absolutely smash Valentin. And he's essentially the middleweight Francis Ngannou. Has power, comes from Cameroon as well. His KO ability is legit. Teba Gautier is a huge middleweight prospect because of the power he has. I think he definitely has the capability to knock out Cody Brundage. But Brundage is also a dangerous dude. Very quick for a middleweight and obviously has some pop in his shot. So I feel like this... I know we just said this about Cody Brundage versus Mansour Abdul-Malik. But this is genuinely one of those fights that I look at and I'm like, how can this be boring? How can this be a bad fight? How can this end up being terrible as well? I think Teba Gautier goes out there and brutally finishes Cody Brundage. Probably cuts him from the UFC. So if Gautier can get past Robert Valentin, I want to see him and Cody Brundage. Straight violence. There's no way that's a boring fight. Teba's style is walking forward and swinging. Get the fight done. And then for Mansour Abdul-Malik, I think Chris Curtis kind of makes a bit of sense. He's just got past Cody Brundage as Mansour Abdul-Malik. He's on a bit of a winning streak. He's undefeated with, if you count the TKO in this fight, nothing but finishes. And Chris Curtis, obviously, gatekeeper for the top 15 of the middleweight division, kind of around that area. Just got finished early this year by another dangerous striker in Roman Kopylov. I like this fight. You've got a great wrestler in Mansour Abdul-Malik versus a great takedown defense in Chris Curtis. You've got a powerful striker in Mansour Abdul-Malik versus a great boxer in Chris Curtis. I'm interested to see how this would go. I do think this is definitely, well, this could definitely be one of those fights where we see Chris Curtis just stretch style on Mansour Abdul-Malik, but I feel like it could be a tough fight if Mansour Abdul-Malik can mix up the wrestling and obviously if he can land some big shots on Chris Curtis. It is a bit of a step up, but he's what, 3-0 in the UFC now? You've got to get a push at some point, and Chris Curtis coming off a finish loss, I think it's only fair. Mansour Abdul-Malik, Chris Curtis, makes sense. And then for Cody Garbrandt, He was in his prime for about 2 minutes, and then he decides to fall off. Cody Garbrandt versus Raul Rosas Jr. Let's do this. You know, he's just lost to Raoni Barcelos, and he has been losing the vast majority of his recent fights. Raul Rosas Jr. is in a bit of a run, slowly improving. No need to rush him. He's only like, what, 20 years old now? So I think it makes sense. Garbrandt has been losing the vast majority of his recent fights, but it's still a step up for Raul Rosas Jr. As Raul Rosas Jr. has kind of just been ticking off these wins, but I feel like Raul Rosas Jr. is yet to be anybody good. He hasn't got a single impressive one in his record so far. So let's give him the former champion, Cody Garbrandt. A former champion versus a young prospect, veteran versus prospect matchup. Cody Garbrandt definitely has the capability to keep the fight standing and pick him apart. Raul Rosas Jr. could definitely drag him into deep waters and get the submission. I'm not sure, but Cody Garbrandt, Raul Rosas Jr., interesting fight between two fairly big names in the bantamweight division. And if Rosas Jr. can beat Cody Garbrandt, we got to push him a little bit after that. We've got to give him somebody close to the top 15 of the bantamweight division, because that will be a big win. And obviously, if Garbrandt can beat Raul Rosas Jr., gatekeeper Garbrandt, his status has been secured. Good win for Garbrandt if he can get that done. And then for Raoni Barcelos, I think Pedro Munoz makes sense for Raoni Barcelos. He's now on a 3-fight win streak, and there's some good wins in there, man. A finish and then beating Peyton Talbot and Cody Garbrandt back-to-back is impressive. He's definitely going to need a bit of a push after that as Barcelos, because he has got some legit momentum. And I feel like Pedro Munoz, a guy that has finished Cody Garbrandt before as well, who also has a win over him, could be a good step up. I think the winner of this fight, or maybe not the winner, but I think if Raoni Barcelos can beat Pedro Munoz, there's a potential argument to say that somebody in the top 15 could be next. You know, maybe if Vinicius Oliveira loses to Carla Phillips and then Raoni Barcelos beats Pedro Munoz, maybe that's the fight you do, because he's riding some momentum. So two former Cody Garbrandt opponents taking each other on. Barcelos, Munoz, striker, grappler, and if Barcelos can get past Munoz, he's a legit, I don't want to say he's a prospect because he's, you know, quite an old guy, but he's got some momentum in the bantamweight division. And then for Andre Petroski, gets outstruck in a boring fight by Edmund Shabazi. I'm giving Zachary Reese. You know, I think this makes sense. Zachary Reese is coming off a win. Petroski's just come off a loss. And he, like I just said, it was a boring fight. There's nothing to talk about when it came to this performance, but he just got beat by Shabazian. And Zachary Reese, usually he's a fun fighter. Usually he's always walking forward, trying to get the fight finished. So I think if you put him against Andre Petroski, could be quite a good fight. You can't really trust these unranked NPC middleweights anymore, but it is what it is. And then for Edmund Shabazian, give him Bo Nickel. This is the fight that I'm really interested in. Edmund Shabazian versus Bo Nickel. Edmund Shabazian on a 2-fight winning streak. Bo Nickel just lost to Reina Derrida, and I feel like this is kind of like the toughest opponent for Bo Nickel outside of obviously Reina Derrida. Bo Nickel obviously has the capability to completely out-wrestle Edmund Shabazian in this fight because he obviously has a wrestling background. Shabazian's wrestling's terrible, but Shabazian's a very dangerous and very powerful dude on the feet, and we just saw Bo Nickel basically quit at the first sign of adversity, so I feel like Shabazian could definitely get him out of there too. It's an evenly matched fight. This is the fight that tells us how good Bo Nickel really is, because if he gets finished by Edmund Shabazian, that proves to me that even though he did already get finished by Reina Derrida, he is nothing but a hype train, and he was never that good. And if Bo Nickel can come back and get a good win over Edmund Shabazian, it's going to be impressive for Bo Nickel. He's now back in the winning column, slowly building back up. So I think this fight makes a lot of sense. Striker versus grappler, two dangerous dudes in their own sense. Shabazian, Nickel, get that fight done. And then in the co-main event, Miranda Maverick loses. I think Casey O'Neill, this might be a bit of a random matchup, but I'm actually kind of interested because Casey O'Neill is coming off a really impressive win over Luana Santos, where I think she was a massive underdog in that fight, and she was able to beat Luana Santos. And I think considering that obviously Miranda Maverick just lost to Rose Namajunas in the co-main event, this fight could make sense. Step down for Maverick, probably dominates Casey O'Neill, but it'll be good to get her back in the winning column. And I feel like we kind of have to reward Casey O'Neill for going out there and beating Luana Santos in the way that she did. And then for Rose Namajunas, there's only one fight that kind of makes sense for me, and it is Alexa Grasso. Rose Namajunas versus Alexa Grasso, two former champions. The fact that Namajunas has won 3 of her last 5 and Grasso's on a 2-fight losing streak, I think it makes sense. This is the fight, like I said, between two former champions. I'm not going to say a number 1 contender fight, but I feel like if Rose Namajunas can get past Grasso, which is going to be tough, then I think she's straight back into title contendership, and she probably could be fighting for a belt soon if it's not for Natalia Silva. So Rose Namajunas, Alexa Grasso, two former champions. Knowing the UFC, they'd probably stick this on some sort of pay-per-view main card because they've got name value in the flyweight division. So Namajunas, Grasso, don't mind the fight, get the fight done, it kind of makes sense. And then for Joaquin Buckley, I think for Joaquin Buckley, Jeff Neal is a fight that makes a lot of sense for me. This would be straight heat for the welterweight division with Buckley versus Jeff Neal. If you look at the current welterweight division, if you're going to give Buckley a step down in competition, he's already beaten Covington, he's already beaten Stephen Thompson. I think Jeff Neal coming off a win makes sense, and this would be a really good fight. You've got an explosive striker in Joaquin Buckley who just likes to swing for the fences with his boxing, and you've got one of the most crisp boxers who also packs a punch in Jeff Neal. These guys have a very similar fight style. They've both displayed dominance against Vicente Luque. I think I'm kind of surprised we've never seen them against each other before. Two powerful boxers. Buckley versus Jeff Neal. This will be a great fight. And to be fair, never count Jeff Neal out, I think, stylistically, because Buckley's a bit of a sloppy boxer. And Jeff Neal being the more crisp guy, he could definitely just outwork Buckley on the feet and get the job done and potentially get a top 5 fight after that. And obviously, if Buckley can get past Jeff Neal, he's running some momentum, get him somebody in the top 5. So Buckley versus Jeff Neal, this would be a banger. Probably shouldn't do it for a Fight Night main event, but for like a pay-per-view main card, I think it definitely makes sense. So Buckley, Neal, get that fight done. And then for Kamaru Usman, called for a title fight. Well, you ain't getting a title fight because they're going to do Makhachev versus Madalena. And unless you want to be waiting out till 2026, then I suggest you get back in there and fight. And I think Belal Muhammad is the fight that makes sense. These guys have been beefing back and forth all over social media. They obviously had that podcast which was unreleased. This is one of the biggest rivalries right now in the welterweight division. We all thought we might have seen it when Belal was a champion and Usman could work himself back up. But now that they're both, well, Belal's coming off a loss and Usman's coming off a win, I say we do it. Usman versus Belal Muhammad. Usman's just gone out there and beaten Joaquin Buckley straight back into title contention. In my opinion, one fight away from a title fight. And the fact that Belal Muhammad's just lost to JDM, who is obviously the current champion but has beaten pretty much everybody else, I think this makes sense. Usman versus Belal Muhammad. If Usman can beat Belal Muhammad, I mean, like I said before, it has to happen. The build-up of being saying like a Fight Night main or co-main event of a pay-per-view. Do a pay-per-view, co-main event 5 rounds, Usman versus Belal Muhammad. If Usman can beat Belal Muhammad, a huge win for Usman. The UFC is celebrating that Belal Muhammad's away from the title picture, and there we go. Usman versus Makhachev or Madalena, super fight either way. And if Belal Muhammad can beat Usman, he's won the rivalry. He's not going to get a title shot from beating Usman, but he's definitely strapped back into title contendership. So it just makes sense. There's no need to rush Usman and give him a title shot immediately. You're a former champion. You've just beat Joaquin Buckley. There's too many contenders to give you an immediate title fight. Earn your title fight, beat the former champion, get the job done. But those are the facts I'd make after Buckley versus Usman. Piss poor fight night, to be honest. I kind of wish I never saw it, but it is what it is. Thank you for watching.